Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another edition of Stars, Stripes, and Anfield Nights. With me tonight, I have Colin and Toby. Colin, how you doing today?
Doing really well. Happy that Liverpool's back tomorrow. Always a nice way to break up the week is with some footy to look forward to, um, and should be I think a pretty interesting game. Arna's old foes, and some connections, a lot of connections from Liverpool to PSV. So should be an interesting one. I'm excited.
100%. I'm looking forward to another game where we don't have to stress. It was very nice to see that match on the weekend where we're not having a heart attack wondering if we're going to come back and win. I was getting too close to Jurgen Klopp time where my heart rate's just constantly skied throughout an
Yep.
entire match. But yeah, definitely looking forward to tomorrow's game as well. But Toby, how you doing tonight?
Hey, y'all, I'm glad to be back. I'm doing pretty good. Obviously we have some footy tomorrow. We're here in America, and we were just talking a little bit about NFL playoffs before the show. Kind of a tough weekend. Jay Muse, if you're watching, sorry about the Bills, man. Sucks. I was really hoping they were going to win. But yeah, we're going to have a Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and the Eagles. So yeah, I guess it's real good that we're going to have some Liverpool football tomorrow. And on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that. It's gonna be some good games.
100%. Colin said a lot to look forward to with the slot going back to old foes PSV. I was kind of excited in the pre-match conference. Slot was talking about. He was like, it doesn't really matter if you finish first or second." Like he was basically just like it's like whatever. Like we're gonna get through this match. It doesn't matter what we finished, but he's like, it's not a good habit to lose, or never a good thing to lose. So that being said, if you don't know, Liverpool's traveling squad for the match tomorrow is a bit of a mix of players, but a lot of star players missing out. So the squad traveling is Endo, Nunez, Chiesa, Gakpo, Elliott, Tsimikas, Robertson, Kone-Doherty, Mabaya, McConnell, Jaros, Kelleher, Nallo, Morrison, Norris, Quansah, Morton, Bradley, Davies, and Nyoni. So there are a lot of youngsters there. Not a lot of first team players. I'd probably say the senior players like from our normal starting 11 would be like basically Gakpo, Robertson, and that's arguably it for guaranteed starters. Nunez, Endo, and Bradley and Kelleher are certainly more than capable of starting for Liverpool. But everyone else is kind of either a fringe player or a youngster. So very exciting. Colin, how do you feel about this chop and change squad heading over to play our last Champions League stage game in this new format?
It honestly was really surprising to me, because Arna's really stuck to, I think, playing the strongest team possible, um, if and whenever they absolutely can. So because of the way that we kind of are, um, I would say maybe more at rest, when in possession sometimes, or even like when out of possession, it's less about like just running straight at people. And because of that, like lightened load, like we've been able to just play, the first team or the first selection in a lot higher like quantity of minutes in terms of selection than previous. Um, so it's surprising to me that, and two is, especially because it is, someone that he's familiar with, that I would have thought that he would wanted to beat, like to make sure that he was beating, and to at least have some options. It really seems like, whatever data they're getting, in terms of like lightened load for the first team guys, that they can really make a difference by not including them and by giving them, maybe just like full, entire day's rest, and just like not even having them, like doing yoga things at home or recovery workouts at home rather than even like having them have to come in. I know sometimes um, in the past, or like if they have a couple days to get away, we've seen like Konate get away to France for like a day or two, or so just the opportunity to do that is very interesting to me, and something that I didn't anticipate kind of going into it. But I think that is really interesting to see that that's the approach and the strategy that we're going with here.
Yeah, 100%. I got to keep my eyes out for Curtis Jones because he's known for a quick LA trip. I know he's not fit, but I'm wondering if he got some time off or whether the lads will be watching from Liverpool. Yeah, it's definitely exciting. And Toby, with the mix of players there, so I was saying earlier, like Nunez, Endo, Gakpo, Chiesa, Tsimikas, Robertson, Elliott, and Bradley, and I guess Kelleher would be the ones who are in or around the first team squad, if not starting or thereabouts. Who do you think that the more senior players in this who are going over are essentially babysitting, or do you think this is really a chance for these kind of senior players to force into clout or slots kind of plans moving forward? Essentially, do you think this is a test for some of the fringe players to say, "Hey, show up, see if you can lead"? In this case, or is this essentially just babysitting?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the tryout thing because in a way, it kind of does seem like it is. You have some players that they are usually on the bench and they usually don't get the nod or they usually don't start these games. So I imagine this is kind of like a tryout for some of these players. Some others probably just like some of the youngsters. It's probably just they're there to kind of just get their feet wet. But for most of the starting lineup, I imagine it's probably like a little bit of both. Like, hey, kind of like, hey, we need a squad to play against PSV, right? But also, hey, this is a chance for some of these players like Nunez, Chiesa, Elliott, even to kind of show what they can bring to the table if they have not already. I mean, sure, they have, but what more can they bring? Let's say for at least how if they, or how can I put this? Earn more trust with Slot, if that makes any sense. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Yeah, I wasn't like I was anticipating some rotation considering that we do have a big game Saturday against Bournemouth, and after what happened last week with Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, I can imagine that Slott's going to take that game very seriously. But I wasn't expecting like a whole like B team basically for Liverpool to travel to PSV. But um, I guess in a way it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, we'll touch on that moving forward. But definitely, yeah, what you're saying, Bournemouth is definitely a strong opposition that we're going to have to play this weekend. So that's probably what was in the back of Slot's mind, even though he, in his pre-match press conference, he was saying that it's just the way, like every 5 weeks or so, he gives off a break for the first team players. Just talk about the League Cup or the FA Cup in that. But sorry, Colin. Building off the kind of youngsters, senior players mix, give you the question of, obviously, Slot in his pre-match interview said Cody Gakpo was going more for the lines of a bit of nostalgia or a bit of sentimental value in the squad, but the likes of Elliott has been very vocal about him wanting to stay at Liverpool and wanting to get back into the first team. Who are you most excited to see in terms of a senior player for sticking out in this game? And then who are you most excited to see for the youngsters?
Yeah, the senior player that I'm most excited for is Chiesa. I think this should be an opportunity for him to start a game, for him to show the quality that he has and honestly has shown when he's had opportunity. Um, like late in games, I thought he's kind of looked electric when he's been on. So hopefully for him to get some actual quality time will be great. Um, yeah, and youngsters, I would love for Jaden Dance to come on, and even if he doesn't start, if he can get 30 minutes, I think would be awesome. And I think he can definitely can bag a finish or two. He's certainly got the talent. So I would love to see him, um, step in. I'm assuming. I guess I'm assuming that if Nunez is traveling, he's going to start. It would seem goofy to me that he would travel and not start, but I guess it could be the inverse. So however long Dan's gets, I'll be happy to see him for that long, but I certainly think that he can be an impact player. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, definitely. Toby, same question to you. Who's the senior player that you're most excited to see, who's got something to prove, and youngster that you're excited to see put his name in the hat?
Yeah, so senior player, I would say Harvey Elliott. A couple weeks ago against Brentford, he played a big part in that game, and I was kind of surprised that he didn't get to start the next week. I imagine he will get to start tomorrow as he should. I would love to see him on the pitch and show his I'm not show what he can do. Basically, there has been a lot of talk, or I wouldn't say a lot, but there's been talk about him leaving. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that's the wrong question. I think the question we need to be asking with Elliott is what is his role on the team, and I would like to see that question answered tomorrow. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about Elliott, and then young players. I'm gonna go with Colin here, Jaden Dan's a couple weeks ago against I can't remember the team's name. Dead gummit. It was in the FA Cup though, and Jaden Dance had that score or that goal, excuse me, and it was really impressive. So it's like after that goal, there was a lot of questions about Dance. Can he replace Nunez, right? And where's this? Can he get a spot on the starting team going forward? And we're going to talk about Nunez and the Saudi Arabia rumors a little bit later, but let's say he does score a goal tomorrow as well. Like I don't think he's going to start, but I'm with Colin. Like I imagine he'll get some game time in. And what if he does score? That definitely adds to the question about Nunez fit role, or his role going forward, or how he really fits into this team going forward.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most interesting thing for me going forward to tomorrow's game. Yeah, I remembered the Eckington Stanley FA Cup match, and for me, it was a bit alarming to see Nunez not really run all over that game. Anyone can have an off game, but for me, it feels like he can really get in his head about that. But then again, he comes up huge against Brentford, and kind of like that's basically Nunez' case in point. Will go missing and then come up with an absolute banger of a goal or an absolutely vital goal for us. But that question you asked Toby about, like, is Dan's pushing himself into that hierarchy of preference for strikers, or at least in terms of forwards? And I think last weekend, him coming on over Nunez was a big kind of, I don't want to say red flag, but like definitely an alarm bell for me. So for me, my answer to that question is Nunez is going to be the senior player that I'm most excited, curious to watch, because I think he really needs to start performing, and by performing I mean scoring goals or assisting at least in every other game. Like I don't think he can get away with those stretches where it's like 4 or 5 games where he's not putting up numbers in those columns. Again, that's just my personal preference. So I'm really excited to see if he takes this chance, because I imagine he's starting and gets a goal or two. As for youngsters, it's tough for me. I do like both of yours Dan shouts, but I think his at least immediate future is more like he's going to get chances coming into the squad in the next couple of years. For me, I'm kind of curious about the players, either like how good can Nyoni be? I want to see him get more challenges and tests, but also Tyler Morton for me. So I think for me, I really like him as a player. I think his composure and his ability on the ball is just really, really great for where he's at in his career. And I really do hope he's able to kind of get more time under Slot to see if he can get pushed into that rotation moving forward. Because I think for me, he's arguably the possibly closest Gravenberch backup that I'd say who could be naturally fitted to that replacement. But again, that's just personal opinion. So I'm very excited to see this game tomorrow, just because it does feel like a free hit. And again, the heart attack monitor will not need to be on. So definitely looking forward to that. But first, we'll take just want to put a quick pause in. Thank you to everyone who's watching the stream tonight. Thank you for everyone getting in the chat. Jay Muse, really appreciate you each week. Baza, you were an early comment, so thank you. Nunez is the best. Hopefully he is the best tomorrow. Definitely would like to see him achieve his potential. But again, thank you everyone who's joining tonight. If you have any questions or comments, please get them in the chat. We will bring them out as the stream moves forward. But Toby mentioned it earlier, Colin, the match against Bournemouth this weekend. And first off, do you Slot did say in the press conference that this so happened to just be a time to give the players rest, that he does this every 4 to 5 weeks, usually with FA Cup match or League Cup match, that kind of that's really just, just a lot of thoughting for what the true purpose is, that he's looking forward to Bournemouth and wants his players to get the first team players to get a rest.
No, honestly, I believe him. I think he's serious when he says that. I don't take him as someone who the Pep Guardiolas or the Sir Alex Fergusons of the world, who will lie and manipulate in press conferences to try to gain advantage. I take him, if he's answering a question, especially in that manner, that he's answering it in a serious and sincere way. So I do think it's kind of just fortuitous that this is the time that's happening. I also think it just works out that even if we lose, the worst thing that can happen is we're going to either come in second or we're going to tie for first, right? So and frankly, the way that Bournemouth are playing at the moment, and that we're playing at Bournemouth, I do think that game is pretty massive. I mean, they made Nottingham Forest look quite bad just last week, and that was at Bournemouth as well. So, and again, we that was just 2 weeks ago that we had a real tough time against Forest away as well. So, I think it is both good luck that this happened during this midweek, and also it's needed. I think that's something that if you can give them a rest before this game, I think that's really important, because I think this Bournemouth team is awesome. I love watching them play. They're so well coached, and I think you need to be at the top of your game as much as you can to try to go down there the South Coast and get all 3 points.
Yeah, 100%. Bournemouth have been arguably the surprise of the season. I'd say, obviously, Nottingham Forest is up there as well, but we'll see where they both finish. I think Bournemouth's win against Nottingham Forest just kind of shows that level that they're at, and they can ball. So I think Nottingham Forest is a lot more of that throwback to the brute. Chris Wood up top, some speedy wingers, hit on the counter attack, but Bournemouth can ball, and they've taken points away. They've taken points off Manchester City. They've taken points off Arsenal, Nottingham Forest. It's definitely a tough match. So, I do think Slot did have his eye on Bournemouth. I don't think he would have made changes just for that, like you said, but um, I, I do think that's.
I think it's the right time to. I mean, if you were making a decision, if you're making a decision whether to have it last week before the Ipswich game or this, like obviously you're going to pick this week. You like, especially the one of the two outcomes for what's going to happen in the Champions League, and that this game is against a much tougher opponent away from home as well. So I have no problems with if they moved it up or moved it back a week, like whatever. I think it's the right time to do it.
Yeah, got the match against Tottenham next week as well, so that will be an interesting week ahead. But Toby, how are you feeling about the rotation in the squad? Do you think, aside from players needing rest, Slot did say in his pre-match conference that I think he's like advice that he got was it's never a good thing to lose or never a good habit to lose. Do you think the players need like a full rest? Like the players aren't like Salah, Van Dijk, Allison, etc. aren't even traveling with the squad. Do you think that the players need that complete break for the match against Bournemouth this weekend, or do you think that they should have been brought along just in case we need to get if we wanted the result, cared about the result, or just to get minutes in their leg, game time minutes?
Yeah, so I kind of followed the train of thought, same as Colin. But I'll add to that. I think this is kind of like an insurance game, or the PSV game is kind of more of an insurance game, right? I think Slot definitely has his eye on Bournemouth, but he doesn't want any of his key players getting injured in this PSV game. I think he's keeping in mind that, hey, we're in the Champions League right now, but we're also competing in the Premier League as well. We're sitting on top of the table of the Premier League, and we're competing for the ship, right? I think it's very telling about his quote. He said in his press conference, it was like, I don't think it matters if we finish first or second. Yes, you don't want to get into the habit of losing, but I see it from this angle that Liverpool has already clinched one of the top 8 spots in the Champions League, right? So I believe that they're guaranteed a spot in the group of 16 or round of 16, excuse me, thinking college basketball. So I think he has that in mind. So this is a game where like, hey, I can quote unquote rest my players and that kind of like a B team go out there. Some of the depth of the squad travel to PSV. We win, great. If we lose, okay, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I have my eye on Bournemouth because we're also competing for the Premier League, and we don't want that other team that's sitting second. That another manipulator that likes to kind of play games, whatever, to catch up to us. So I think, yeah, Slot was just wanting to make sure that his players are well rested, they don't get injured in this game, and have them ready for the match against Bournemouth this Saturday.
Speaking of that manipulator in second, Colin, Arteta had some words about how Liverpool I forget the exact quote, but he was basically like, Liverpool typically have a point where they drop the ball or they have a bad spot of form. I bring up Arsenal and Arteta in this context because we'll move on to the next topic of referees. And Arsenal, I was on their side for this one against Wolves. I don't know in the chat, please give your thoughts on whether or not you thought that was a red card or not. But the appeal, I guess, or for the red card, Luis Scalia, I believe that's who it was, for Arsenal, his red card against Wolves was overturned. He's set to go. He's going to be available for his next coming games. We all know the PGMOL have not covered themselves in glory. We all know that VAR has not been a runaway success since it's been implemented. Recent news with David Coote coming out saying the pressures of referees. There's a lot. Basically, referees have been in the news a lot, and it's never really been good news. Con, how do you like? What needs to happen in this regards? What do you think's the way forward here with referees, PGMOL, and VAR?
It's funny that I think that there's a very similar discussion happening in. I'm thinking of like four major sports leagues, in the Premier League with their referees, in Major League Baseball with their referees or with their umpires, in the NFL, and in the NBA. There's serious conversations happening about the quality, and I don't want to say I don't think that they're all like just corrupt. Like I don't think that they're a corrupt group like negatively influencing games like there are in some leagues across some I would say lower thought of leagues across the world, whether that's in South America or whether it's across lower continental Europe or Africa or Asia, like where there's smaller countries and places, and there's like definitely match fixing. I don't think it's that. I do think that these like referees unions do not allow themselves to let their employees be criticized, and they don't take seriously changing or improving their processes. And I think that after a long time, and because of the technology that we have now, it's coming sharply into focus when they don't live up to the standard that we think that they should. I mean, it is definitely a problem that we're able to see instantly and in 4K resolution, whether or not a ball touched the ground, like in the NFL, if it is or isn't a catch. You know what I mean? Like there's really specific ways for us to be able to see whether or not they're making mistakes, and I think that if they're not willing to change some of the processes or to change how these games and these leagues are refereed, then I don't think, if they're not willing to change it in that way, then I don't see an end to the like very public, quite harsh criticism that they're going to receive. They have to be open and willing to changing, in order for things to get better. And I think that goes across all of those leagues with all of those referees unions. They have to be better, and they've got to find better ways to use the technology to their advantage to make the sports more fair, more correct, whatever way you want to define it.
100%. I think that transparency and that willingness to take feedback and change, hit the nail on the head. Carter, thank you for jumping in the chat. I will bring out your quote a little later. Surprised that you're still up at this point, but if you want to hang around, we will get to that. Toby, building off of what Colin said about the feedback and reviewing processes and improving, one of the things I noticed was, especially after the Michael Oliver called, was there were other referees. I think Mike Dean was like, that wasn't a red card. Previous players were saying that wasn't a red card, pundits, etc. But then the kind of, I'm not sure, I don't know, I don't think it was death threats, but what it was, not the the extent of the kind of pushback there, the outcry of the decision from Michael Oliver was he got a lot of hate from that decision. And obviously that's not acceptable or any kind of threats to him or his family, but it's interesting how the narrative in the kind of punditry world, there was almost like a segment on Sky Sports focusing on how that is not okay. And for me personally, I thought that kind of like, well, yes, that's not okay. It kind of detracted from what are people's outcries about. Like, I think, the Arsenal agenda on terms of like Michael Oliver in particular, I think he's given the club like 8 red cards. The next side is like 5 red cards. So, they first personally felt like victimized from Michael Oliver. I know that Michael Oliver was referee for the Odegaard handball basketball, no call last year. So it's not always the case where he's against Arsenal, but I think it missed the point of why there has been such outcry from this incident. Again, same question really that I gave to Colin. What's like the way forward with referees? How do they get trust back from the supporters and fans who watch the game?
Yeah, so we're all sports fans here, so I think it's a rule that we're never going to agree / like referees in general. For some reason, I'm thinking about this segment I saw in a couple years ago from Good Morning Football, which is an American football show here on NFL Network, and one of the journalists, his name is Peter Schrager, he was talking about an incident. I don't even remember what the call was, but he did not like it, and he was talking about how referees need to be held accountable for having certain calls, bad calls, right? And like what he suggested was that they should be fined for certain bad calls. And that just comes to mind. Like I wouldn't say like, hey, I would fine for every bad call, but like finding it's probably extreme, but it's like when it's kind of blatant, right? And it kind of changes the course of a game. I think that would definitely be an interesting concept to implement. That's even if they choose to, I highly doubt it. But yeah, like I think Colin mentioned it as well. Like in some other sports, we have this issue here in American football. Going back to American football, we don't even know what the bloody hell catches. Like I, I'm not even going to get into the Dallas Cowboys thing. No,
or a pass interference.
Or pass interference, yes. We'll go with that one. The death call game kind of still irks me to this day. But the pass interference, the Saints versus the Rams back in 2017, that cost. It was a pretty blatant pass interference call. Actually, the player literally tackled the receiver before he even caught the ball and didn't even get his head turned around, and no flag. Why? Just why? And it was a bad call all around. It cost the Saints the chance to go to the Super Bowl. End up costing the Saints the chance to go to the Super Bowl. Kind of going back to us was Liverpool. I mean, there was another bad call where this past weekend where Endo basically got almost kicked in the face. I didn't see the video of it, but it's like I've heard about it, and it was pretty bad. Or we can go back to Man City last year with Kung Fu Panda, Jeremy Doku just straight up karate kicking McAllister. Like, it's just, how do you miss these blatant calls? Like how? I don't get it. And I'm sorry if I'm ranting or going on a tangent here, but it's like I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think the blatant ones are hard to kind of look past. Olivier chiming in, referees are 100% corrupt. Arrests have happened in Belgium, Portugal, Italy, Spain, France, and England. Gambling cartels can get to these dudes easily. Colin spoke a bit on this earlier. Olivier, if you want to scroll back, I'm siding with him. I don't think there's a massive corruption scandal in Premier League football referees, but I think there needs to be Colin really hit the nail on the head for me with the kind of referees union. Like, I think they back up their own when they make a mistake. Like, hence the Michael Oliver call against Arsenal. You're telling me 4 people in the VAR room weren't like, hey, maybe you should take another look at this? Like, that's all you really need to say is essentially like, hey, there's some angles that don't make it. But instead, they're trying to defend his decision. And I think as soon as the on field referee makes a call, especially when it's something subjective like that, they're looking how to reinforce the call. They're looking how to defend themselves rather than objectively just saying, like, hey, you might need another look. And for me, because I don't always like just saying like, well, this is messed up, and just ranting and raving. It's like, let's try to offer solutions and accountability from Colin. I like the fine idea, something like for me, I'm like wondering if like Michael Oliver, if you rack up one of these like bad calls, like maybe you can't ref a top game or for the next 3 weeks or however. Like, I'm wondering if their pay scale is like if they ref a Arsenal Liverpool game versus like a Ipswich, Leicester game. Do they get paid more depending on the match? Can that be an incentive to get a good referee track record? Then you get higher profile games, you get paid more, etc. Some sort of accountability and then reward punishment for refereeing well versus refereeing poorly. But we'll see what happens moving forward. Colin? Yeah.
The problem comes back is like the people who would be evaluating, the people who would evaluate that and who would determine whether or not it is the referees union. You know what I mean? Like there seems like there's, if you let the people in power police themselves, they'll get away with it. They'll let themselves get away with it, or they won't hold themselves to the reasonable standard that everybody else thinks is correct or to the standard that would cause actual betterment or change. So it's like, I mean, to Olivier's like comment, like there have been betting scandals in NBA refereeing that was just a couple years ago, but it's much more like, especially because now so much is like on your phone, and they can just kind of tie that back directly to your to your internet connection and figure out who you are, like through so many different like fingerprints that you have. Like it's much more difficult for those guys to be able to get away with it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure it does, but I do generally agree that like it's not something that's happening like hugely widespread. I think if that were the case, they would be pretty good at hiding it. Like it'd be really obvious if that was something that was happening all across the world in like the largest leagues. I think obviously like when there is money to be made, there are going to be people trying to like lie and profit in their own way out of it. I just don't think that that's something that is happening. Like, I think what's happening is like these people just aren't held to any sort of standard, or any like increasing standard across time. Like they're holding themselves to the same standards that they were. If you talk about Major League Baseball, like they're holding themselves to the same standards that they were 35 years ago. And like they have robo umpires who can just call balls and strikes like where it actually is. So, like we've got to figure out some sort of system here that referees are able to, like those guys can still have a job if they do well, but are like you said, Drew, too, held to some sort of standard where, if you're not performing, then someone else should be doing the job. Like that's how it is for the players. If the players are not performing, like someone else takes their job, and they're being paid well enough, referees, professional referees in these leagues, that like they can hold them to those standards.
Yeah, definitely. Put up the Mr. Nice HK playing devil's advocate. I think the referees see those incidents as a natural coming together. Even though damage is done, it seems like the natural course of play that happens occasionally. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the classic like letting the game flow, where if there's a hard challenge in like the first 3 minutes, the ref's just like, all right, let's, don't do it again. But if it happened in like the 85th minute, it'd be like everyone would be screaming for the second yellow sending off. Like there's definitely those cases, and that's where it becomes really hard. And then that's where you're looking for fairness. Like if he got away with this, then our player should be getting away with that, if etc. It's definitely not an easy job. But I think that's what's kind of interesting when you see the reaction, like the defensiveness of PGMOL. Like it's like everyone's attacking them. It's like your job's not easy. Same as the players. Like, and Kai Havertz's wife got like a bunch of deplorable like DMs after he missed some goals, and it's like again, that should never happen. On the other hand, it's also part of the high profile role that you play. Like if you are a Premier League striker, if you are a Premier League player or referee, you are in the spotlight, and that's not going to change. But a real quick shout out to Olivier. If you do want to read a match fixing book, this is a side note, but Declan Hill's The Fix. I read that, very interesting book. But back
is that a fiction or a nonfiction book?
Nonfiction book.
No way.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Writing that, it's called The Fix.
The Fix, Declan Hill. Definitely recommend that book. Really interesting because it does touch on World Cups, like stuff like that. Really interesting things. So keeps you an eye on to look out for certain matches too.
He's always got the book recs. He's got the book recommendations on deck.
100%. But we will go back now. We're going to get to the last part of the stream, or at least the last part of the title of the stream. But before we do, definitely want to, again, give a shout out to everyone who's watching the stream, everyone who's getting involved with the comments. We really do appreciate everyone who watches these streams each week. It makes them really enjoyable for Colin, Toby, and myself, and either Dan or Brandon when they are here as well. So appreciate y'all dropping by and giving the stream a watch. If you do have any questions, please throw them in the channel. I've started a few. J-Muse, I have not forgotten yours. So I will bring that out a little later. But we're going to touch on the last part of the title of the stream, which is Darwin Núñez to Saudi Arabia. So the rumors actually from credible sources as well. David Ornstein, The Athletic, that Darwin Núñez is a target for El Nasir, Saudi Arabian club, but Liverpool does not want to sell him. So apparently there was an earlier bid in the window. I think it was upwards of 70 million. Toby, just blanket statement. Do you think that Núñez has a future at the club?
Yeah. I want to say no. Right now, at the current moment, I think he has a role in the club. Does he have a future with the club? I don't think so. And like I said earlier in the stream, it'll be very interesting to see if Jayden Danns comes in and scores another goal tomorrow against PSV. Then it will definitely amp up the Jayden Danns taking over Darwin Núñez's spot. It'll definitely amplify those talks. But I just he's struggled to get minutes, and when he has come on, sure, I love the 2 goals he scored against Brentford. I was so amped up. I mean, I even have the screensaver of him celebrating on my phone. Like it still amps me up to this day. But I can't judge one moment versus the entire season, and it hasn't really worked out for Núñez. So I don't think it's going to happen in January, but if they do sell him, I would imagine that it would be in the summertime where they have more time to talk, more time to collaborate with FSG had more time to collaborate and come up with something that them and another side, whether it's Al Nassr or another Saudi Arabia club or another club in general, can come to agreement too.
No, it's definitely fair. I kind of lean on the side that his future is yet to show that he has a future at the club. I think for me personally, it's just the position that he plays as striker. He hasn't played under Slot. He hasn't been the chosen like in the hierarchy yet, and I don't think he's going in the remaining days of the January transfer window, but unless he has a big second half of the season, not just cameos, I think him and Jota, maybe it's like you're taking up a spot that ultimately could be, could be, I guess, like used better by another player. But that's where I stand right now. I'm going to throw that to you as well, Colin. So Carter earlier in the stream said Darwin out, Evan in, Brighton. Oh, yeah, Ferguson. Yeah, Evan Ferguson of Brighton. Um, do you think? How do you feel about Darwin Núñez's future at the club? Full stop.
I want to feel better about it than I do because I like him and I really sympathize with someone who runs off of emotion and maybe has a difficult time like reining themselves in at times, especially when I was playing, especially when I was like an active athlete playing soccer and lacrosse, like someone who can be a little hot-headed, like that is certainly something that I empathize with a lot. Um, I just I think for the amount that you paid for him and for the expectations of a striker in the highest expectations league of the world, I just regardless of opinion, it just has not come together yet. Like it just has not materialized, and I don't think I'm like on one side or the other by saying that. I feel like that's a very like that's a statement that you can get all sides to agree on, which is that he has not quite done enough yet to justify what we had given up for him, and what we had paid, and like what the expectations of someone who of his age and profile and status in the team, like he should be contributing more goals and assists. Um, do I think that like in theory, like he could at some point that it could catch and all of a sudden we're like there it is. Yes, I just don't think it's going to be in the Premier League. Like I could see him going to Atletico Madrid and lighting the world ablaze, or or somewhere in, I mean, you could say, I mean, the other places he's been linked with or possibly linked with are AC Milan. I don't think he's only 25 still. Like his birthday's not till June. Um, Saudi Arabia like is not the place for someone who is a serious like takes themselves seriously at 25 years old. Like if he was going to go somewhere else, it should be Spain. Um, in my opinion, I think that that would be the best place for him. Um, I just don't think it's gonna click here with us. I think I think it'll click with someone. I just don't think it's gonna be us. I feel bad about saying that.
Yeah.
I like him so much. Like I really like him. I just don't feel good about it.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of like a Yago Aspas in terms of what you said, Colin, where it's like just maybe didn't work out for Liverpool, but will be an absolute banger on the right team because it's clear he's got the talent. It just might not be the system. Jay Muse, shout out there. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, like I think Toby said it earlier, where he's like he has a role in the squad, and I really hope that he continues to like come on. Like for me, he's like the best substitute you could throw on. Throw on with 20 minutes left. Defensive legs are tired on the opposition, and just let them run. But I don't know if that's enough for a future to, as you said, Colin, justify the price tag.
He's on 6 goals and 4 assists in all competition in all 4 competitions combined this season.
Yeah.
I was looking up while Toby was given his opinion, and I was looking at his contract. His contract's not up till 2028.
Yeah.
It's like it's not coming up soon. So like there's a lot of years of control in terms of like his contract. So I don't know that if it doesn't click the end of this year, I don't know that it will be next summer that we turn him around and let him go. I think it would only be if there was a really good offer that is something that would happen. Like there would be still, so that would be summer 25. So there's still a whole nother year, summer 26, and that would still be a year and a half of control left.
Yeah.
Like I just don't see that. I don't see that happening. Or yeah, 2 years of control is 2 years of control. I don't think it will be this summer that we'll move on from him. I think that they'll give him next season as well, and then I think after then, I think summer 26 would be when it might happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it depends on who leaves. Like Luis Diaz has been rumored with the Barcelona, PSG. So I think if he leaves, then that opens up a spot. I think it really depends on who goes, or Jota, who knows. But we'll segue into the next part. Mr. Nice HK put in another comment that I'm going to tie into a previous comment. But we're going to wrap up the stream in the next 10 minutes or so. So if you have any lightning fire questions, please get them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them before we sign off for the night. But Toby, this was James put this in the comments earlier, so I'm going to bring this up and then tie it to Mr. Nice HK's recent comment. So James said, if Darwin leaves in the summer, who is the most realistic target to replace him? So that being said, Mr. Nice HK said, there's a real lack of credible strikers in the market right now. Darwin is a great player to have in the squad. He is a game changer off the bench. People should forget about his transfer fee. So tying those two together, kind of what Colin said, we do have the opportunity to have control and give him more time to settle in at Liverpool. Do you think we should take that time, number one? And if so, who, or if not, who would be a striker that you think we should look at to replace him?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Drew. Can you repeat the question again?
So essentially, Jay Muse's question was like, who is the replacement for Nunez? And Mr. Nice HK said that he's a great player to have in the squad. So would you replace him? Yes or no? And if so, who do you think would be the striker that we should get to replace him?
Ooh, great question. Gosh. At this moment, it's kind of hard to say. I know Isak is a very popular name, but I do believe he's injury prone, and I believe I'm not sure if it's what his fee is, but I do believe it's expensive. But that is definitely a name that comes into mind. Golly, striker. As of right now, I don't. How can I put this? Give me a minute. If there's not any quality strikers out there, then yeah, you might as well keep them, right? But sorry, I'm trying to process this. Give me a minute.
It's all good. I'll throw it to Colin while you're thinking, Toby. Colin, would you give Nunez another year? And I'm not going to give you an option. You can say yes on that. But if you had to replace him, that would make you answer the second one.
Yeah. I would. I wonder if Diaz goes, if he wouldn't be interested in it, if he would be like, well, my buddies have all, left and gone away, and it's time, it's time for me to go. I think it would be really largely dependent on if there's a reasonable like fee offered by someone else to whether or not he actually would go. If he did, I would love João Pedro. I know he's a little more, some people, really like him more as a 10. I don't think he's a pure 10. I don't think he's quite as good with his back to goal and turning and pushing forward in that way. I do really see him as a Bobby Firmino, not a one-for-one regen, but very similar skill sets, very similar games, especially early Bobby, where people were like, no, he's a 10, he's a 10. It just is a different way to interpret someone who's playing as a 9, and maybe someone who is not going to lead the line totally. If we were just picking, Toby mentioned the guy that I want Isak. I've wanted Isak for a long time. I had gotten obsessed with Basque Country and San Sebastian and Real Sociedad quite a while ago, and had watched a lot of him play there, and I was like, that's the guy. We got to get him. And then, of course, Newcastle, with their oil money, said, me first. So I think there would be an opportunity to purchase him. I think that they're for Isak as someone who said that he would wanted to play for Liverpool. I think that if an offer that they'd be willing to consider, I think Isak would want to come. But those are the two kind of different profiles, but both of which I would be very excited for.
That's fair. Gonna piggyback on you and Toby with the Isak pick for me. Same kind of appreciation for his game as you, Colin. I've seen him for a while, and just like this guy can ball. I really like his skills on the ball. I think that he can link up play really well. Can combine really well with those around him, and has a lethal finishing ability or finishing trait in his locker. His injury record is not concerning, but it's definitely an asterisk to look out for. But that being said, he has played a lot of games for Newcastle, so it's not like he's Jota level of injury status. So knock on wood. Other than that, I don't have anyone off the top of my head. I could say like Irakis, but I think that's another punt. I would be down to take a bet on him just to see. But again, Colin, I think to what you were saying about the price fee that we would potentially get for Nunez, I think it dependent on that kind of who we go for, and leave it up to the Liverpool and Slot to figure out who's the right replacement. As for giving him more time, I think for me, I'd say this 6 months. It depends how Nunez can perform in this 6 months. Because I don't want question marks of like, do we need to give him another year? I think he's had 2 under Klopp, 1 under Slot, and the verdict would be up for me.
I think that's a really compelling point, which is like, at what point do you just cut and say, thank you, but we're just done here?
Because I think we're still in the boat of where we could get a $60 million bid for him. But if he had another year and it didn't work out, it'd be like, who's paying?
Who's taking this rescue puppy from us? Like, you're like, someone take him, please.
Well, you could also make the argument too that he has had 2 years under Klopp. Why not give him 2 years under Slot? I mean, this is a different system, different tactics. Maybe he's having a hard time adjusting, and maybe you give him another year to adjust. Something to think about as well.
Yeah, definitely devil's advocate there. Like, go back to Mr. Nice HK's like the price fee thing. That kind of me is how I like he's saying we should forget about the price tag. And while I totally agree on that part, I think it's up to the player to make you forget about the price tag. Like, no one's talking about Declan Rice, 100 million transfer, even though he's not worth 100 million. It's just like Arsenal overpaid for him, but he's a good player. Full stop. Virgil van Dijk, Allison. Like no one talks about their transfer fees other than the fact that even though they were set like huge transfer fees at the time, they were bargains for the player. I think it's up to the player to make that not matter.
That price would only not be worth it if he doesn't come good. Like if we spend 120 million on Isak, I think this is a reasonable comment. Like I don't think this is an unreasonable thing to say. But if you spend that money on him, and he is a 25 goal, 30, or let's say 17 assist Premier League, goal scorer every year, like worth it. Like it doesn't matter that it was an overpay or if it wasn't an overpay. He's doing the thing that you really need. And that's like, honestly, like that's what I would expect out of Arsenal and their troubles at striker. Like I think they're going to overpay, but I think it only really ends up being an overpay if they don't come good.
Yeah, 100%, Colin. Like that's no one talked about Allison and Van Dijk, and what did they bring? They brought Champions League and Premier League within the 2-3 years of them joining. And I think that for me is the argument of letting Nunez move on. Is could his replacement potentially be that person who starts as a striker and can bag us 20 Premier League goals, especially with Salah? Like all those question marks, which we will not get into tonight because we're wrapping up the stream. Brandon, thank you for chiming in late. Definitely just want to highlight your comments. And again, thank you everyone who has joined. We'll wrap up with one final question, but we really do appreciate everyone who's joined the stream. Panel from JMuse. Who would be your realistic, I appreciate the realistic, dream deadline signing for Liverpool? Toby, do you have any dream signings for deadline day? Realistic.
The deadline is in 4 days, right?
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Gosh, to be honest, I feel like even if there was one, it probably is something that's coming out of left field, one that we did not. A name that we have not heard of. It's frustrating talking about Liverpool and transfers, right? Because every time they're linked with a player, they 24 hours, sometimes not even that, they automatically shut down the rumor saying, no, we're not interested in this player. No. So I imagine I don't think we will sign anybody this window, but if there is, it's definitely going to be one where a player that we just didn't, we weren't linked to, or just a name that's completely out of that field.
Oh, that's fair. That tends to be how Liverpool operates. Colin, I'm going to jump in before you, unless you have the last say. I kind of want a sneaky bid. Like it won't happen, but dream, but somewhat realistic to keep you in your channel's debuts would be a left back signing. And I really want to see Alvaro Carreras from Benfica. I would love to get an ex-United player and have that kind of rivalry stick it to them because they just got in a left back. They're ignoring the very good. They had a buyback clause on Carreras. They completely ignored that, I guess, because he's a left back, not a left wing back. But I would love a sneaky bid for him to potentially bring him in. Other than that, maybe Ryan Shikri for me would be a great, apparently we're not going in for him deadline day, but realistically we've been rumored and linked with him and he's available. So that would be the realistic one. But Carreras for me would be the dream. But Colin, bring us home.
I mean, so obviously there's been stories breaking about Juro Hato. That was the most American way I could possibly say his name, so excuse me. That was really bad. I caught myself halfway through. I was like, this is going to be very Pittsburgh of me. In terms of realistic, like what might happen, I think if that does happen, that's great. Like that's fine. Like I'm good with that. I've seen Ajax play. Like they're not very good, but he's good. Like I'm not worried about that. I I can't. I really like Olivier. I like Olivier's opinions. I like when he's in when Olivier's in here giving us opinions. I can't stand the DM talk anymore. Like I can't. It's why like I can't do the much talking in the group because all we talk about is we need a DM, we need a DM, we need a DM. I'm like I can't give any more opinions. I'm sorry. I really I know Toby disagrees or had disagreed with me on another week. I would love Kirkez. I saw that he said like on a Twitch stream or something. He's like, I'm not going to Liverpool, which is like, do you mean now or do you mean never? Like I don't know, but so that's probably not going to happen. I mean, he would be the one. I would love to sneak him. And if not, then like Margehi, they're like Palace are struggling. Could try to cash in, covers a couple positions for us. Still young.
Want like 70 mil for him probably.
If they even dare, I swear, send Crystal Palace off to the championship. Yeah, I mean, if that's the only one we're gonna get, I'm good. That's like that's fine. A typical Liverpool, like we'll just move that transfer up 6 months. Sure, like that works for me. That's fine.
Well, we shall see in the coming days. By this time next week, when we're on the next Stars Stripes Anfield Nights, we'll see if we have anyone new to talk about. But for tonight, thank you again for everyone who's joined the stream. I only say this once a stream because first and foremost, we appreciate you joining the stream, watching the stream, and we hope you did enjoy it. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. Again, we really appreciate everyone who joins these streams. So for myself, Colin, and Toby, thank you again for participating in another edition of Stars, Stripes, and Anfield Nights. Have a great rest of your week. Hopefully we have a couple more wins to talk about next time we see you. And